One. Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is Something to Consider. My name is Kale Wolfley. I'll be one of your hosts today. And the objective of this podcast is really just to give you things to consider. We're going to try and cover as many topics as we possibly can, get as many guests on here as we can, and just give everybody some different things to consider as we go through this difficult life.
My name's Trevor. I'm Kel's brother. I will be your co-host. And yeah, exactly what he said. We're just here to talk about everyday challenges, problems, and things we can do to help each other and just share information that we're all in it together, learning together. And yeah, today's podcast, it'll be a little bit more about us. But in future podcasts, we plan to, really hit some heavy topics and discuss some matters that we think need to be discussed.
Yeah, so if at any time there's anything you'd like us to cover, feel free to go ahead and drop us an email. Let us know what exactly it is you'd like us to talk about, and we'd be more than happy to do that. But for the here and now, we're kind of going to dive into who we are, where we came from, and why we're doing this podcast. So, Trevor, if you kind of want to start us off, just talk about the small town life. Maybe we'll start base level, elementary, growing up, what that was like.
Yeah, well, to start, I guess we moved into Panguitch from a small town, not as near as small as Panguitch itself, but we came from Moapa Valley, Nevada, over there north of Vegas, and going into Panguitch, we didn't know a lot of people, but we learned who they were fast. I mean, the population right around 2,000. After about a year, you knew everyone. It was kind of crazy how things worked like that. But no, we moved in when I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, and I don't know how old you were at that time, probably 10 or 11. And, we just started going into elementary school. Our daily routine was wake up, walk to the end of the dirt road where the bus stop was. It wasn't that much of a walk. We'd hop on the bus, we'd go to school, and I don't remember a lot from elementary, but it was pretty much just a kind of a play thing. I was never good in my elementary years at school. Got in a lot of fights and a lot of trouble, but for the most part, that's pretty it. It was just pretty basic, young life, young kid stuff.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a similar situation for me. Little bit different though, because I actually remember a good bit from Nevada. I remember growing up in Nevada was very similar probably to the way that you remember growing up in Utah, because I remember being young, walking with Garrett to school, because we weren't too far away from the school. I remember there were a couple times there's this douchebag, his name was Forrest, and he had a friend named Rivers, and they used to pick on Garrett, and we'd get in fights with them on the way home from school. But when we left Nevada, I distinctly remember having a couple friends that I was pretty tight with. I had Derek, Michaela, and Carson as well. They all kind of lived there in the neighborhood. So moving, it wasn't necessarily a big deal for me, but I do remember kind of leaving some of those friends behind, and it was definitely I guess a sad thing for me, but I wasn't, like depressed about it or anything. So when we did move, I remember moving out to River Lane in that little white house. It was kind of a big white house, but it seemed so to me anyway. But yeah, just walking to the bus stop, hopping on. I think Mr. Henry was our bus driver out there on River Lane. Great guy. But yeah, just like you said, going to elementary school, I think we were maybe a couple years younger than you had said. I remember being, I want to say 6 or 7 when we moved there, because I remember within that first year or two, I was baptized, so I would have been 8. But yeah, I remember I went to first grade here. Well, there I should say. But in Panguitch, I remember first grade all the way up through graduation. But I remember having a pretty positive experience in elementary school. I remember a lot of the teachers, they were really there for the development of the students. They really cared. I remember music times with Mrs. Henry. It was very much for the students. We had a lot of cool activities where we'd have fake money and then we'd do like swap meets and stuff. So we were learning in fun ways. At least I felt like we were. I'm not sure if that's how it is in other elementary schools, but I feel like the teachers there really did try to make it a positive and fun learning opportunity. Similarly, I got in a lot of trouble in elementary school. I remember I was in the principal's office probably more than I was at recess for jumping out of the swings and running up the slides. One of the big ones was me and Hunter Hatch. We took a hot dog out of the lunchroom and we put it in the toilet. Not really a big deal, but somehow we got caught for it, and we thought we were in a lot of trouble. We were like, dude, this is bad. We're going away. This is a problem.
Nope, yeah, I leave
And
one of those daily, so.
yeah, hey, gotta do what you gotta do, right? But I remember Mr. Reynolds at the time, he made us feel like shit for that. He was like, well, every time you get in trouble, it's you two. Why are you always in trouble? What are you holding hands under the lunch table? And we're like, dang, son. Straight to the feels. Like, we were probably like fourth grade, you know. We weren't, he just straight up called us fags. We were like, dang, this man's brutal. But I guess that's one of those small town things. You kind of maybe not get called gay by your principal, but you definitely get some more harsh reprimanding from those in authority because they can kind of get away with it. They know your parents, and they know that if you were to run and be like, "Oh, Mr. Reynolds said I was holding hands," they'd be, well, really? Well, maybe you shouldn't be a dumbass. So,
Just to put that in a little bit of context, when we say elementary school, most elementary schools they've got quite a few children in them. Ours had two. It was K through 6, and it had like two splits. There was two classes or two separate classes for each grade. So first grade had two groups of students, and each group of students was 20 to 30 kids roughly.
mm-hmm.
And so I mean your entire school, right around 300 kids. It wasn't big. It wasn't too big. We had a teeny little library. Super small school. But kind of moving on, Kel, you can kick us off on this one. What are the things you remember most from growing up? Maybe in your middle school, high school years.
um, middle school, high school, it was all such a blur. It almost seemed to be like the same. So we actually have a middle school that's separate from our high school. It's just across the street, but they are technically separate buildings, and there's not a ton of intermingling that goes on between the high school and the middle school there. But middle school, very similar to elementary school, um, in that the teachers, they just care. Maybe there's a little more expectation. I feel like by the time you get into middle school, they pretty well expect you to be a well-behaved young adult. So if you don't have that figured out by then, it's definitely it starts to get tough for you if you're one of those troubled individuals. If you like to make trouble, that's where it really starts to get you, is in middle school. But in any case, it was a good experience for me personally. I loved high school. I probably spent in high school. I probably spent more time in college than I did actually in high school, because we'd go to parties on the weekends and stuff. We'd go to SUU. I spent a lot of time in Price, hanging out with my buddy Logan, and I had a lot of fun in high school. Had my tight little group of friends that I like to hang out with, but really I was friends with everybody. Like Trevor was talking about before, it's a small school. The elementary school had like 300 students. They had those splits, but the elementary school is actually even bigger than the high school. So there you have more elementary age students than you do high school. I graduated, my class had I think like 32 or 34 students in it, so you really do know everybody, for the good and the bad. So if there's any kind of drama going on, unfortunately, everybody knows about it, whether it's true or not. So that's kind of one of the things that you hear about it, but you don't really understand it until you're in a small town situation. You'd think adults would be adults and kind of just keep out of that stuff, but um, bad news travels fast, and especially in a small town. So if you happen to get into any kind of trouble, everybody knows about it within a very small time frame. So yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
and you tended to get in a lot of bit of trouble,
yep,
you know.
yep.
But no, I think it probably shaped you and, you know, anybody that gets into trouble, it's either good for them or bad for them. They either learn from it or they don't, and they end up getting into further trouble. But no, I have a my high school and younger years experience is actually pretty much opposite from Kel. I mean, we grew up in the same house. We did the same things within the house, but on the outside, I mean, Kel was out working, and I was the exact opposite. I was playing sports, basketball. Um, Kel had lots of friends at high school. He enjoyed that aspect of it. I didn't like high school. I wasn't a good learner. Bad grades. Didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fun. It was stress. Looking back on it, like don't high school matters. Don't let me tell you it doesn't. But it's not as big of a deal as some people make it up to be. I mean, there's ways to progress in this world besides schooling. There's plenty of forms of schooling and plenty of ways to build an education aside from the math and the history side of things. And I think that's one of the things Penguich taught us is how to work without using numbers and out using the scientific game. I mean, I don't know where I can't remember. Did you start work at Subway, or would you consider working at Dick's Farm the first job you had?
Um, as far as work goes, we all kind of worked with Dick before we had any kind of real employment. I'd say we started working with Dick. I want to say as early as because really as soon as we moved there, like we'd go and help him because we were just down the street from him in our first house.
Let me
So
pause you. How about you tell us about Dick? Who is Dick?
yeah, so Dick Exel. I talked a little bit about River Lane. That was kind of the first place we knew when we lived in Panguitch. We lived first on River Lane, then a little place in town we were renting while we were building the house that our parents currently live in now. Um, but Dick, he's a farmer who lived out on River Lane. We were probably 100 yards down the dirt road from him. And Dick is kind of where I don't want to give Dick too much credit here because Dad did a really good job at making sure we had work ethic. But Dick is really where the rubber met the road as far as making sure we were working. Dick's a pretty interesting individual. He has a farm and he does a little bit of everything. Um, I think the majority of what he was doing was growing alfalfa back when we first started working with him, but he had all kinds of stuff that needed to be done. And he had a very specific way that he wanted it done. If he wanted a piece of concrete moved from point A to point B, not only did he want it to get there, but he wanted it to get there exactly the way that he wanted it to get there. So if he wanted it in a wheelbarrow, he'd make sure we use the wheelbarrow. If he wanted it on a 37-degree angle facing northeast, longitudinal across the northern hemisphere, whatever. I mean, he'd tell you exactly how he wanted it done. And if you didn't do it exactly like that, maybe take it and move it right again that other one, just like that. And he'd make sure that it was done to a T, no matter what you did. If you're using a shovel, the way he wouldn't use a shovel, he'd make sure to let you know, try holding it like this, which was good. Because that's really what it takes, you know. You got to be able to take those constructive criticisms, even if you think you're doing just fine. Especially with those authoritative figures. But Dick, he was a great guy. You know, it's not like he was trying to belittle us or anything. But I'd say Dick played a very big role in us learning to work. It wasn't like mental work, it was physical work. We had to be able to listen, we had to be able to compute, and then we had to be able to, put it to the road and actually get it done. So I remember there were a lot of days when I was just like, I do not want to do this right now. Like, just got done with wrestling practice. It's like 30 degrees outside. And he needed something done. It's like, all right, let's get it done. And it would be a slow process because he wanted to get done the exact way he wanted to get done. We could have done it in 15 minutes probably. But we might have been out there for an hour and a half. And it's just, you don't want to be there, but you just have to do it sometimes. And that's probably, I'd say that in a nutshell is what I kind of learned from Dick is just how to take orders and respect those orders.
No, I remember one occasion it was you and I both. We had to go out to Dick's. We ended up taking the dirt bikes because parents were gone, but we take the dirt bikes out there, and it was a very unique day. We were working in the grain silo. He had a leak in the roof, and he didn't know about it. I'm sure you
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
And so we're working in this grain silo, and he's just having us get all the dry grain that's on top. He's having us bag it, and it was a lot of grain. So we're bagging all this dry grain, and then we get to the wet stuff. It was all fermented. It burnt our nostrils. It was the worst thing ever. And, it was it was gross. And by the time we got done with it, he scratched his head. He goes, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably should have given you boys masks. And he goes, well,
Yeah.
see you tomorrow. We hopped on the bikes and we rode off. And that was the end of it. But no, we did all kinds of stuff for Dick, and uh, he taught us how to work. But like you said, we can't give Dick all the credit because the vast majority of it goes to our father. And working for him, you don't get paid. So it makes
Yeah.
that much
Well,
work.
working for Dick, you hardly get paid. I remember we'd put in like 2 weeks working for Dick. He had no concept of how much time we spent there. We could spend 100 hours there. Be like, oh, what's fair? What do I owe you boys? And of course, it's Dick. You're just happy to help the guy out. So that we'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. I gotta pay you. Some days he'd hook you up fat, but other days it was like, here's $5. Don't spend it all in one place.
Yeah, no, especially the younger you were, the less he paid you, which is
Oh yeah, for
understandable.
sure.
But
Yeah,
I don't know. As I look back on it now, it didn't seem like a lot of money, but at the time, I'm pretty sure I was kicking my boots. It was,
yeah,
it was
yeah, for sure.
pretty good. But working for Rob, that's a different story. That's a mental task and a physical
Yeah,
task.
for
You
sure.
know, um, I remember the days that would go smoothly. He would always he always had some sort of you know objective, and if we reach that objective, we'll go to Arby's at the end of the day. But by the time we got done with the objective, Arby's was closed, and he's like, "Well, boys, catch you next time." Uh,
Yeah,
it's just Rob. We did a lot of things for him, but he kind of had the same concept Dick did. He didn't necessarily care about the longitude and latitude of where we placed the concrete, but he wanted to make sure that the concrete was, in a good place. And if
that
it
was done
wasn't,
right.
we would do it again. You
Yeah,
know,
for sure.
same thing. I mean, I can working on trucks, planting trees, laying sod, hauling rocks, picking weeds.
Picking rocks. That was cruelty. The picking rocks thing was really cruelty if you think about it, because
Yeah, most people when we say picking rocks, they're like, "What does that even mean?" How about you touch on that?
yeah. So picking rocks, more commonly used as a form of punishment in the Wolfley household. I think we got paid $5 per barrel when it wasn't being utilized as punishment. Is that correct?
I I'd never got paid. I don't know what you're talking
I don't know
about.
if we ever got paid, but I remember being told at one point we could obtain a crisp fiver in exchange for every wheelbarrow of rocks or something like that. So we had this slope where we planted trees, and I guess you could call it grass, but it's not really ornamental grass. It's just wild grass. Anywho, um, when it comes to maintaining that grass, you can't really cut it because there's so damn many rocks. But um, our dad decided that that would just be the uniform punishment, was that if you're dicking off, then you had to go haul rocks. And we'd take this wheelbarrow that more often than not had a flat tire, and it would hold just enough air to get you down into the rock field. And then by the time you packed it full of rocks, it was basically flat again. So you're trying to use this wheelbarrow that's less than optimal to haul these rocks. And we're kids, we're like 10, 12, 4, all the way up to 18 years old. That wheelbarrow, even though it's a wheelbarrow, it still gets pretty heavy when you got it packed full of rocks. I mean, it's not like it was light by any means. And then the flat tire only added to it. But yeah, we take these rocks and we just dump them somewhere else. But as rain, wind, etc., carries more of the dirt away, the rocks always just come back. So we probably hauled millions of rocks off the side, at least in the tens of thousands range. I mean, we hauled a ton of rocks down the side of that hill. That's pretty much the hauling rocks. I don't know if you have anything to add to that,
No,
but
I don't have just trauma, but
yeah, I guess the
nothing.
biggest thing about the hauling rocks is when it was for punishment, it was usually in tandem. So if Trevor and I were fighting, which in our younger years, Trevor and I, we definitely did not get along
No, yeah, we
at
bickered.
all.
But
We were
I
at the
had great reasoning for it. Let me just share a quick story. It was my birthday, and I'm the sports kid, right? I like sports. My mom gets me two balls. She got me a soccer ball and a football. I didn't have that soccer ball for 10 hours before it had a pocket knife sticking out of it.
I don't recall that one personally. I remember we had some fights, but I don't remember popping your soccer ball
You
intentionally.
popped my soccer ball.
Yeah, well, you probably
But
deserved it.
but anyway,
Anyway,
go
whenever
ahead.
we'd pick rocks, it was typically in tandem because we'd been fighting. So if I'm pissed at you, you're pissed at me, and we go out to haul rocks, it's usually not a good time. I remember we'd a lot of the time someone would take a rock to the dome because we'd end up throwing them at each other and be pissed at each other because, oh, if you wouldn't have done this, we wouldn't be out here. I think we learned a lot from that. I don't think we really appreciated it at the time, but um, Mom said it best: it takes two to fight, and she's
No,
not
yeah,
wrong.
that's just right. Maybe now's a good time to kind of introduce our mother. Our father's name, his name's Rob, and he's kind of the stickler. The if you get in trouble, I'll be the one to beat your ass, so don't get in trouble.
Yeah.
But our mom, she's the exact opposite.
Mm,
She's loving. She'll definitely stick it to you if she knows you're being a little shit. She'll let you know and she'll punish you, but it's a different form of punishment. It's guilt punishment. It's she might shed a tear, like you never know with her. But she's the loving one in the out of the parents. Like I feel like most families have one that's more intimidating than the other. Our father was the intimidating one. Our mother was the one you could joke around with and you know have a good time. Very loving, and she raised us on the inside of the house. Like she taught us. We were, I remember when I was young, I always wanted to do the dishes, but I was considered too young. I couldn't see over the countertop to do the dishes, and everybody else got to do the dishes, but I wanted to do the dishes. And then when I was tall enough, she finally let me do the dishes. And after I got sick of it never stopped. She kept making me do the dishes. We always had a chore list. She
yeah.
kept us doing that, or we couldn't go and hang out with friends. She taught us how to work just as much as my dad. She did it in a safer environment for sure. I never had a log thrown at me cutting firewood, but it was good. No.
Yeah, I remember one of my responsibilities in the house was I was typically the one who would cook the food. I was a culinary genius, really. But I cooked a lot of the food, at least when she wasn't cooking, and so that was kind of one of the things that I would do. But Trevor and um, I think we may have different experiences when it comes to mom. I agree with just about everything you said, except for the fact that she wasn't as much of a joker with me as she was with you and Paxton.
Good
Like
reasoning, I'm sure.
Me and Garrett, we couldn't really be crude around mom. Like I remember when I got home from my mission and I heard the way that y'all talked around mom, I was like, huh? What? This is acceptable now?
Hey,
Because
I wasn't there when you got home, bud.
that's fair, but like between Garrett and Paxton, I just was like, completely different situation. I was just blown away by that. But anyway, it really doesn't change the story, though. That's not necessarily important because, for the most part, yeah, she definitely was the less uh, aggressive,
Intimidating.
intimidating, and aggressive when it came to punishment. For example, I remember there was one time that I got in trouble with the law. It wasn't really anything too serious looking back, but small town, everybody knows about it, and you're not getting punished for the act of what you did. You're getting punished for the magnitude of uh, sullying the family name, really, is what I can chalk that one up to. And I had to restack the wood pile, which is a big chore. Like, usually it would take, I don't know, probably a couple days between the four of us to move a wood pile. I moved the wood pile back and forth. So I moved it from where it was to where it wasn't, and then I moved it from where it wasn't back to where it was. And I did that in less than a week because that was my punishment. I was grounded for a long time. The grounding was kind of mom's thing. So that kind of gives you the difference in punishments we might receive between the two.
I recall watching him move that wood pile from afar. I did not help. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much that's a little bit. That's just a taste of our childhood.
The tip of the
Uh,
iceberg.
yeah, we had a lot of good experiences, and we did a lot of playing in different parts of Utah and Nevada. We were big into bikes and motorsports. We did all that stuff. And we'll touch on some of that stuff, share experiences in later podcasts. But we're gonna move on to a little bit about what we did after high school and where we're at now. I'll probably start this one off because I feel like I've been attacking Kel with all the questions and whatnot. But after high school, maybe it's better that you go first because that's the chronological order, actually. So,
All right, give me 1 second.
yeah, no problem. But
All right, so after high school, so I graduate, just like everybody else in Panguitch. I'm ready to get out of this shithole, spread my little wings and fly away. Oh, I hate this small town, even though you don't. It's just something you say, and then you learn to appreciate it later in life. But that's pretty much what it comes down to. I was ready to leave. I wasn't sure exactly what that was going to look like. I had plans to go to Dixie. What do they call that now?
Utah Tech University.
Utah Tech University for their diesel technology program. But I was feeling a lot of pressure to go on a mission. So for those of you who don't know, in Utah, you're either a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or you're not. All right, there's really no in between there. You're kind of doing that or you're not. There's not a lot of distinguishing in between, at least not in the small town of Panguitch. Maybe up north it's a little different now, but in southern Utah, there's really no in between there. And basically what it comes down to is when you're 18, you can go and you can do a 2-year mission. And if you are within that organization, there's a lot of pressure to do that. And I was feeling that pressure. I knew it was a good thing to do. By no means am I saying I didn't have a choice, because I certainly did. Ultimately, I wound up making the choice to go and do that, and I don't regret one bit of it. I went to South Carolina for 2 years teaching the people here. I currently live in South Carolina, teaching the people here about Jesus Christ and how awesome he is and how we should follow his example. And that aspect, I really loved it. I loved being able to bring happiness into people's lives and teach them how to find peace in this world that's, it's so turbulent right now. There's all this turmoil going on. A lot of people don't know where to find that peace and how to be happy. So that aspect of it, I really loved. And we'll get into it a little bit more about maybe some of the things I didn't love as much about it. That's probably a conversation for another time. But fast forward, I wound up coming home a little early for my mission. I broke my big toe. I was told I need to stay off of it for, I think it was 8 weeks, and I had 6 weeks left. So it didn't make a lot of sense for me to stay out and pretty much just recover doing nothing there. So I went back home to Utah, recovered there. I stayed in Panguitch for a little while, less than 6 months. And I wound up coming back out here because at this point I was talking to a nice young lady who I had met here, who I was interested in, getting to know a little better. So I came out here, got a job out here working for Thorne Research as an encapsulation operator. So basically what I did was I would make pills. So the little capsules that have the powder inside of them. I operated a Bosch 1505 and a 1505 SG, where I would produce up to 1 million pills in one night. So that was kind of a cool job. I learned a lot there, but it was also a mentally taxing job because I spent a lot of time alone in a room with just, like, it wasn't silent because the machine was going, but it was very rhythmic. And so it was easy just to kind of like zone out and just kind of be in your head, which at the time wasn't healthy for me. But long story short, I wound up quitting that job and moving to Georgetown, South Carolina, to pursue an education in diesel technology. That's something that I'd always been interested in. I've been turning wrenches since I was 16, working out at Ruby's Car Care in Panguitch. So it's something that I always knew I was going to do that. So I wound up going to that college, learning about heavy equipment, heavy duty trucks like what we got here. And I just kind of went with it and took it as far as I could, graduated at the top of my class, loved it. I went to work for Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, working on their trucks and cars. And within a year of employment there, I received my level 3 technician status, which is typically it's a pretty lengthy process, but right place, right time. I happened to kind of get an in that most people wouldn't have the opportunity to get, and I was able to climb that ladder a lot faster. So shortly thereafter, I was actually reached out to by the college. They were telling me they need another instructor for this diesel technology program. After a lot of consideration, I really didn't think I was going to get the job because I was underqualified at the time. I didn't have my ASE master technician status, that was a must for this position. But I went and interviewed anyway, and I guess they liked me, and they told me that I had X amount of time to go ahead and get that. And so I took the opportunity and ran with it because I'd always wanted to teach. I'd had my apprentice in the shop before, and I really loved being able to help him grow. And so I knew I wanted to teach. I just didn't realize it would be something that occurred so soon. But I ended up taking that opportunity, and it's been awesome so far. I guess I kind of missed the part where I came back here, married Grace, my wife. Kind of skipped that part, but that's in there between graduating college and accepting the job for Chrysler. So just kind of insert right
No,
there.
I assumed that. I knew that, but I also assumed that it lined up in my head. You met a girl, you found a job after school.
Yeah.
But is that all?
That's pretty much it for the here and now.
Cool. Well, I was kind of in the same boat when I came out of high school. I graduated, and I had two older brothers that served a mission. Kel, he's right above me. Then there's one above him. His name is Garrett, and he went to Tokyo, Japan. So I felt like I was, on the pressure seat, just like everybody else. You serve a mission, or you take that chance of people possibly judging you a little bit more. And at that time in my life, I cared. I cared what people thought. Don't now, but I did then. So I went on a mission, and I went on the mission with the mindset that I'm not going for myself, but I'm going because it's a commandment, and if I don't do it, what else, I served in the Philippines, the WOG mission. It is the most northern part of the Philippines, and it was a completely different experience than what Kel might have experienced. Kel was in, a first world country. I was hauling water in a bucket out of a well out back to take a bath. I was sleeping outside because it was too hot inside underneath a mosquito net, and we didn't have power. Um, like most things in my life up until this point, the mission too taught me how to work. I learned a lot on my mission. I learned how to be dedicated to something and to do it until you're satisfied. I met a lot of people, built a lot of great relationships, and even to this day, I've been home for almost 4 years now. Be going on 4 years in March, and I still talk to people from my mission that I met there and I served with, and mission was very beneficial to me. It gave me a mindset and the ability to learn new things, which played a role in the later years of my life. After I returned home, I started working for a pest control company. I worked on both sides of it. I worked on the sales side of it, and I worked as a technician. And that just paid for me to go to auto tech school. Kel's a diesel tech. I'm an auto tech. We have similar backgrounds as far as our after mission education. I went to 2 years of auto tech, and during that 2 years, I decided what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life, and that was to work for somebody else. It seems, at the time, it seemed flawed to me, putting in all these hours for somebody else and, just receiving the small cut of the deal. So I took some advice from people around me. I went and started my own business in the auto industry with a mobile lube and auto maintenance service, and it's been very beneficial. I've continued to learn. I apply things every day from my mission and to today and into my time right now. I don't have a family. I didn't get married like Kel's been married. I'm still waiting on that part of my life. But I'm very content with where I'm at right now. I'm learning new things every day, and it's been really good. I think I can say from the time I was able to, walk and understand, I've been working, and that's really what has shaped me into the person I am today, is being able to work, listen to others, and just take advice when it's needed, and it's really benefited me. Everything we've talked about today has kind of just been about us, what we grew up with and where we are now. But we're just telling you this to kind of, so you understand where we come from when we share topics and different ideas we may have on this podcast. Honestly, some days we plan on talking about just really fun, having a good sit down and a laugh. And other days we'll talk about serious things we find in everyday life that affect us and those around us. And Kel, what do you want to add to that?
Feel free to correct me if this isn't what you have envisioned, but the goal of this podcast, is really to cover anything that our audience wants to talk about. It can be anything from religion, trucks, cars, just personal things that you're going through, because we all deal with it. We're not special people. He's a business owner. I'm a teacher. We're just normal people, but we're all going through the same shit. And really, we all need something, to turn to, and not everybody has that kind of community. So we're hoping to kind of cultivate that community here in this podcast so that we can all have at least something to turn to. Because like Trevor said, he doesn't have a family of his own right now. But he's got a lot of people around him to support him and, give him that advice when he needs it. Some people don't have that. Some people don't have that type of community. So we hope to be that community. And the title, Something to Consider, it's not just something for you to consider. It's things for Trevor and myself to consider, talk it over. It's not always going to be easy. There's going to be times when Trevor disagrees with me. I disagree with him. You may disagree with us collectively, but that's what it's about. It's talking through some of those things and hopefully finding on the other side some type of common ground or something that we can take away from to make us better as individuals.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. We're here to talk to you guys, and you guys talk to us. Let us know if you have anything you want us to talk about, and sometimes we'll have other people we know tuning in that can share some advice, because I don't know everything, Kel doesn't know everything, and we're just here to learn.
Yeah.
Well, Kel, if you don't have anything else, I don't have anything else here on the agenda. You want to sign us off?
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I know this was a bit of a slow discussion, but we'll pick it back up next week and we'll cover something hopefully a little more interesting than a very brief history of Trevor and myself. So if you happen to watch this between now and then and you've got a topic you want us to discuss, feel free. Otherwise, we'll probably just find somebody to pull straight onto the podcast and go from there. But thanks for tuning in.